Good evening to everybody. Today we will have the veterinary education update series. That's the session 6. That's the topic is on the veterinary graduates in the pharmaceutical industries, opportunities and the challenges. And our research person is Dr. Sebastian V. Joseph, MUSC DABT ERT, Director, Head Toxicology and Non-Clinical Pharma Lex GmbH, that's India Private Limited. So I will give his very brief introduction about Dr. Sebastian VJ, DVM, MUSC DABT and ERT. He is the Principal Consultant, Director, Accelerate Pro Approvals by applying the science of pharmacology, toxicology and risk assessment. That's the South Delhi, it is his address. And he is a board certified toxicologist and also the pharmacologist with 14 years of the experience in preclinical testing, pharmacology, safety pharmacology, experimental toxicology, the occupational toxicology, drug discovery and development, and toxicological risk assessment and regulatory toxicology and assessment of the cosmetic ingredients and the other products. So currently he is involved in strategic development of the consulting service in pharmaceutical product development with special reference to the toxicological requirements, then also the non-clinical evaluation strategy in support of IND and NDA, risk assessment of the pharmaceutical active ingredients and excipients, impurities qualification of APIs and drug products, then risk assessment and derivation of the permitted daily exposure, that's the PDE, and occupational exposure limit, support of the GMP manufacturing. And apart from this one, the environmental risk assessment of the pharmaceuticals, then review investigators brochures, non-clinical and clinical overview of the CTD modules, respond to regulatory queries as appropriate toxicological risk assessment and safety evaluation of cosmetic ingredients products, and also the medical devices testing and consumer products and exposure assessment and DL-EL derivation in support of the REACH load, coach and mentor team of the toxicologists and the medical writers, and also refine and implement of the ISO 9001-2015 standards and implement quality standards towards achieving the operational expenses. And his experience is in the Pharma Lex, 5 years, 10 months as on date, and he's a senior principal consultant and medical affairs and toxicology. And till this October 2007, he has got the 4 years and 3 months, especially in case of this New Delhi area, India, and also the principal consultant, medical affairs, toxicology since March 2006 to September 2017. That's about 1 year and 7 months. And the providing strategic development and consulting services in the pharmaceutical product development with special reference to the toxicological evaluation and also the non-clinical drug development and support including the non-clinical evaluation strategy, study designing, study monitoring and review in support investigation of new drug application, that's the IND, and new drug application in USA, Europe and other major markets. So apart from this one, there is the respond to regulatory agencies' queries and recommend appropriate strategies to resolve the issues pertaining to the toxicology, health and environmental risk assessment of the generic and differentiated product. And he's also there to provide scientific leadership to the team, coach and mentor team of toxicologists towards developing the technology sound scientifically. That's the capable team. And the toxicology evaluation of the impurities, etc. It also, and apart from this one, he is very expertise, having the expertise in the health hazards and risk assessment of the pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. Yes, he has also worked in the origin discovery technologies about 6 years and 9 months as a group leader, preclinical safety evaluation in the Hyderabad. And of course, he is a lead, managed and accountable for team toxicologists as the preclinical safety evaluation department, designing tox studies, strategies, etc. And of course, his job includes the majorly the toxicological. And he is also involved in training, mentoring, and technical support to the team members of different pharmaceutical agencies and scientists, April 2011 to March 2012. So apart from this one, he has got the wide experience of associate scientist, and also he has designed many of the scientific knowledge and functioned as a study director for general toxicology, including acute repeated dose toxicity studies up to 90 days duration. So yeah, apart from this one, of course, it is he has got varieties of the very wide experience in different pharmaceutical agencies, and of course, he is a renowned toxicologist and pharmacologist in the different capacities in different pharmaceutical agencies. So, with this, I request, of course, Dr. Sebastian to go ahead with the presentation, because he has got very wide experience, and of course, he is graduated from Veterinary College, Bengaluru, and also master degree as well as the BVSc in under the Karnataka Veterinary Animal and Fishery Sciences Bidar. So, with this brief introduction, I request Dr. Vijay Sebastian to take over the session and present and also interact with the participants especially. Thank you, Dr. Sebastian. You can share your screen also. Please unmute your mic, Dr. Sebastian. Please unmute your mic.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shridhar. I am just trying to share my screen.
No problem. If any difficulty, please inform me.
Yeah, sure.
You can just click on the share screen and select.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. It is being done.
Is it visible?
Yes. You have to put it to full screen, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. How is it? Is it visible now?
It's good. Now it's good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shridhar, for the introduction. Of course, that was a very detailed introduction. Anyway, I am very happy to actually join the platform with Veterinary College and Veterinary University, because I am very much attached with this institution. I passed out BVSc in 2003, and subsequently I continued in the same college, Veterinary College, Bangalore, and I pursued my master's in pharmacology and toxicology. Yeah. So therefore, I'm very happy and excited actually to spend some time with this university. So I am supposed to talk today about opportunities and challenges for veterinary graduates in pharma industry. Now, to understand what are the opportunities and challenges, I think the first thing is to understand how the pharma industry works, how pharma companies are organized, especially in the context of our country. Now, when you talk about pharma companies, it can be companies who are involved in the manufacture and sale of medicines for human consumption, or it can be for veterinary use. So that way, broadly, for the purpose of this session, I can classify into human pharma industry and veterinary pharma industry. You will see in many cases there is an overlap, because the companies involved in the human pharmaceuticals, they may be also involved in the veterinary pharmaceuticals. So you will see sometime a branch of a particular company dealing with veterinary. Now, if you look at a pharma company, what are all the different divisions? For the sake of today's session, I can broadly categorize this into 4 different divisions in a pharma company. The first and the foremost, the heart of the company is its corporate structure, where the high-level administrators are involved and who are controlling the different divisions of a company. So, what are the different divisions in the company? You have R&D division, research and development, who are responsible for coming up with the new technologies and new products which can be sold in the market. Once you have a technology that has to be manufactured, the drug products have to be manufactured, and this takes place in a special designated units. They are typically drug manufacturing units or factories, which is usually away from or different from the R&D. And once you have the products manufactured, that needs to be sold, that needs to be shifted to medical stores in various parts. So that is done by a marketing and sales team. So essentially, these are the different divisions in a pharma company. Now, as a veterinary graduate, there is a potential for you to work in all the 4 divisions. Although in most cases, maximum opportunities for veterinarians are actually in the R&D sector. That is because veterinarians are from a biology background. Veterinarians understand all aspects of human and animal health, and they understand very well how a drug works in the body when things go wrong. That is, when a pathology develops, how a disease is manifested and how drugs can be utilized to correct that pathology. And also they are well versed with the diagnosis of the disease and every aspect of human and veterinary health. Although veterinarians are specialized in animal health and animal medicine, the concept are all applicable to human medicines also. And therefore you will see that veterinarians are working in both human pharmaceutical companies as well as in veterinary pharmaceutical companies. So there is a provision, there is a potential for you to work in any divisions of a pharmaceutical company. However, most of the time you get opportunity in the R&D division or research and development division. Okay. Now, how a drug is actually developed and marketed. Now, if you see, pharmaceuticals or pharmaceutical industry is a highly regulated industry. That means you can't do the things as per your whims and fancy. There are defined regulations, laws and rules for R&D, for manufacturing drug and for sale of drug. And therefore, you are governed by government rules in every country. Now, therefore, as a pharma company, when you have a product and you want to test it in human beings or in animals, or you have already tested and it's ready to market, you need to approach government agency, concerned government agency with the data. So data means, what are the essential data sets that the agency expects? There are 3 important fundamental data. One is the regulators expect that your product works against the disease. It has some beneficial effect in controlling the disease. That is efficacy. The other part is safety. When you give this drug to animals or humans, it should not cause undue health issues because of this drug. So that is, safety, or it should not cause undue toxicity. And the third aspect is quality of the drug that's manufactured. It should not have impurities at levels that are not allowed. It should not have chemicals unwanted chemicals, contaminants, unwanted, chemical coming into the drug product, or chemical leaching out from the drug container system into the product. So essentially, the medicine that you market should have a defined quality standards. So there's three things: efficacy, quality, and safety. This should be met. Now, in reality, what happens is that every drug has its own adverse or unwanted effect. So because if you go by the basic principles of toxicology, every chemical is a poison. So that way, every drug also has a pharmacology effect. At the same time, it also has effects that are not intended, so unintended effects, which you can't actually make it free of an unwanted effect. Therefore, what is important when you market a drug is to maintain a balance between benefit and the risk. Risk means adverse effect, benefit means pharmacological, intended pharmacological effect. So you need to weigh actually the benefit and the risk. And when your product is having more benefit compared to its potential adverse effect, that's the time where you get approval from the regulatory agency. So this is how things work in the pharmaceutical sector when it comes to developing and marketing a pharmaceutical product. Now, if you see a drug product, an injection that's presented in a vial, so what are the things in it? You have a drug product. In that, you have an active ingredient. You have an inactive ingredient or excipient. So active ingredient, for example, paracetamol. Excipient could be some chemical, to make that paracetamol in a solution form. The companies would have added some chemical. That's excipient. Then you may have some impurities. This is not in your control. When you manufacture certain unwanted chemicals because of a chemical reaction of the active ingredient with the excipient or any component of a drug product, these unwanted chemicals may come. So they are impurities. And then lastly, you may have chemicals coming out from the container closure system. That is, the vial itself. So all together, actually, you have the drug product, drug product in a vial. So when it comes to the safety, you should evaluate the safety of all the components. And why I'm saying is this: when it comes to veterinarians working in pharma industry, safety evaluation is one of the most critical activity in which veterinarians are commonly involved. And that's the reason why I just gave this introduction, saying that all components of a drug product should be evaluated for its safety. Now let's understand a little bit about what are the different types of a drug that companies manufacture. So broadly, there are three types of drugs. You may wonder why I am saying all these things, because the topic is going to be about opportunities and challenges. But as I said, fundamentals are very important. If I directly say what are the opportunities, it doesn't make any sense. You need to know the fundamentals first. Therefore, I am giving a little bit background about how things are going, how things work in the pharma industry. So broadly, there are three types of drugs actually. From a regulatory standpoint, I can classify drugs into three, and this is my own classification. So don't expect that the same type of classification you will see elsewhere. I have made this just for this purpose of this session. Now, one type of drug is new chemical entity. So new chemical entity means this particular chemical has never been used as a drug anywhere in the world actually. It's a new chemical altogether. When you have a new chemical altogether, you will do series of preclinical and clinical studies to ensure that that chemical has efficacy, that is of acceptable quality, and it is of a acceptable safety profile. So extensive investigations are required when you are developing a new chemical entity, and it takes several years and several million of amount of money to bring a new chemical into the market. And this type of a drug development is done usually by a relatively larger pharma companies, And in India, there are not many companies who are into this kind of drug development. There were few companies during the time 2000 until 2012 or so. Subsequently, these companies, they shut down their operation with respect to new chemical entity because they found that this is not, very attractive to them. It has a lot of, huge risk actually. So, Indian companies found it very difficult and almost, I can say very little work is happening with respect to the development of a new chemical entity in India. The other type of a drug is generic drugs. So here what happens, you have a drug in the market whose patent period has been completed, the patent has expired, and now it is ready for any company to manufacture that and sell, as their product. So this is actually, called generic drug. Here you need not to have to do too many studies to show its safety, quality, and efficacy. Rather, what you do is you use a reference drug, that's an original innovative drug that NCE marketed by the inventing company for the first time, and then you develop your product almost mimicking, similar conditions, similar dosage form, similar type of excipients and things like that. And then you do a bioavailability, bioequivalent studies. So what you do is you administer your drug and you administer the original drug. The same chemical active ingredient is same, but the drug product is different. And then see that, you demonstrate that your drug product containing the same active ingredient, it's systemic exposure in terms of area under the plasma concentration time curve and the peak plasma concentration, Cmax, and the time to reach peak plasma concentration, that is Tmax, are comparable with the original NCE or original drug product manufactured by the inventing company. So this is called a generic drug. In India, a lot of companies, majority of the pharma companies are into generic drug business. They are not into innovative NCE business. They are into generic. So essentially, they are making a copy of the innovator version. The third type of drug is differentiated drugs. So here what happens, you are again referring to and making use of the NCE, the new chemical entity, the first approved drug, with that active ingredient. You are making use of that product, but you are making some changes, to your product, in your product. Let's say the original NCE was developed as an injection for a particular indication. And what you are doing now is you are making a tablet out of it. And the dosage form is different. So then it becomes a differentiated product. Or another example, your original NCE was developed for diabetes. And now you have done some research with that same chemical and then found that it is also working to reduce the BP. So now you may develop a new product with the same active ingredient, but for a different indication, in this case, blood pressure reduction. So such situations, you will call your product as a differentiated product, differentiated drugs. So in this type of a drug, you will have to have good amount of safety, efficacy, and quality data, but it is not as extensive as the new chemical entity. So the advantage is that quickly you will be able to get into the market without spending millions of rupees. With less money and time, you will be able to market your product, for which you will get patent or market exclusivity. So this is the advantage. So that's how you have three different types of drug products manufactured. In India, this is differentiated. The third category, a lot of companies are involved in the differentiated drug production and development. So essentially in India, the first type of drug products are very, very less, and such development work is taking place very little, but most of the work is actually happening with respect to production of generic drugs or differentiated drugs. Now, if you see, this chart actually is for development of a new chemical entity. I said it takes several years, maybe 10 years, 3 to 6 years. Broadly, you can classify this into preclinical stage, that is before testing the drug in human beings. That is called preclinical. And then clinical stage, where testing takes place in the human beings. In the clinical, you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I'm not going into the details. And then ultimately, the data that you generated during the preclinical stage and the clinical stage are put together in the form of a dossier and submitted to the regulatory agency for their review. Once they review, they are convinced with respect to efficacy, quality, and safety, they will give approval, and that's the stage where you can market your product. That's how the drug will come into the market. Now, this scheme is for a new chemical entity, but remember, in India, not many companies are doing this kind of, development. So this is essentially the same, again, new chemical entity. There are, 3 different stages, identified, the first one. And then once you have the preclinical data ready, there are a different set of preclinical data that you'll have to generate. And once it is ready, you will make a dossier, you approach the regulatory agency, take permission to test in human. So this is something that I didn't mention in the previous slide, but here you need to take permission. Then once the clinical trial is over, again, you need to take permission. So that is where you have to provide data in the dossier. And who will generate the data? We will look into that now. Now, I said, broadly, a drug development, this particular scheme applies to NCE as well as for the differentiated product and sometimes for generic also. And therefore, most of these things, what I'm now saying, applies to companies in India. Now, you have broadly two phases, I can say, when you develop a drug. You have a preclinical phase and then you have a clinical phase. So in the preclinical phase, that is where, the preclinical R&D work, takes place. That's where, we will focus more, in today's session, because that's where veterinarians are working. Now, if you see a preclinical R&D setup, of any company who are involved in the drug development, you will see certain specialties, certain divisions. One is chemistry, then you have a pharmacology division, then you have a pharmacokinetics. Sometimes pharmacokinetics could be a part of a pharmacology division. Then you have a department called toxicology, and then associated with that is pathology. And in most cases, another division altogether, that is vivarium or animal house. Vivarium, pathology, both are, most of the time it is associated with the main toxicology department. So this is how you will see. These are some of the major divisions in a preclinical or in an R&D unit of a pharma company. When it comes to the clinical, you have clinical pharmacologists. In the clinic here, our involvement, veterinarians' involvement is less, although there are many veterinarians who are involved in the clinical development also. So what typically takes place there? Clinical pharmacology, investigating how the drug works in human being, clinical medicine, surgery, gynecology. So these are all specialization of human medicine. Depending upon the indication, you will be dealing with or people MBBS or MD graduates who are specialized in the respective area will be involved in the clinical research. They will be conducting the clinical trials actually. And then there will be people from other backgrounds supporting these, medical, graduates. So this is how, the clinical research takes place. Supporting these two, preclinical and clinical development teams, you have certain common teams, project management, administrative team. There are people who are specialized in the regulatory affairs, so these are some of the, and then intellectual property department, these are some of the people, these supporting people actually who are work closely working with preclinical team as well as clinical team. Now, the red encircled, divisions, so this is the place actually where veterinarians are actually working. Now, one of the, I said there, there is a huge amount of data required to be submitted as a dossier, as a package to the regulatory agency. before testing the drug in clinical trial, that's in human, and also before you get a final approval for marketing. Now, this entire data set is actually provided in the form of a CTD modules. This is CTD stands for Common Technical Document Modules. So this essentially means, this is just a guidance from the ICH, that is, International Conference or Harmonization of Requirements for Pharmaceutical Registration. So this is an international body who have come up with certain guidance, and they have specified how to present the clinical and non-clinical data while submitting an application to the regulatory agency. That is called, it is called CTD modules. It has to be submitted in CTD modules. There are, different numbers given for different type of modules. The red encircled items are the ones which are more relevant for a non-clinical, because that's where veterinarians are actually involved. So these are, non-clinical overviews, non-clinical written and tabulated summaries, non-clinical study reports, and so on. So this is essentially, a package of non-clinical studies, non-clinical data. So who writes this? People who write this module, they are called medical writers. Now, sometimes veterinarians are also working as medical writers in pharmaceutical companies. Apart from performing experiments, they are also working as medical writers. So that's the reason why I brought in this triangle, the CTD module, and explain that concept of CTD, because there's a potential that you people tomorrow can get into medical writing. Now, this screenshot actually, it is just to give you a flavor of what are the data set that are there when you are applying for an application to the regulatory agency. This is only about non-clinical data. I'm not talking about clinical data. So as you can see here, pharmacology data, how drug is acting, what are its primary pharmacological effects, secondary pharmacological effects, safety pharmacology, what are the interactions, actually pharmacodynamic interaction. Then you have a topic on pharmacokinetic, absorption, metabolism, distribution, excretion, and then drug interaction. Then you have a whole battery of toxicology studies, single dose to repeated dose to until, carcinogenicity studies of 2-year duration, toxicokinetic studies. Then you have to address the safety concerns associated with the impurities. You have to demonstrate that how safe the excipients used in the formulation are. So these are the data set that, has to go into the dossier, and veterinarians are involved in the generation of these data, in interpretation of this data, in writing and compiling this data. So veterinarians mainly involved in this aspect of the CTD modules, this aspect of drug development, actually, mainly their involvement, whether you see pathologist working in pharma company, a toxicologist working in pharma company, or, just a BVSc graduate working. So most of the people are concerned with these set of data, actually, nothing else. They are concerned with this set of data. Depending on the company in which they are working, depending upon the projects that company is involved in, the extent of their involvement and type of work, slightly varies, but essentially you are dealing with these kind of data. And therefore, if you are an aspirant who want to get into a pharma industry, you should have a fundamental idea of what this data means. When you say secondary pharmacodynamic, you should know what it means. What are the studies done? How that information is made use in evaluating the efficacy and safety of a drug. So you should have a fundamental understanding if you really want to get into pharmaceutical industry. So therefore, all this data set, you should be familiar with. Now, another area where veterinarians are actually involved is animal house. And this is almost exclusively is a responsibility of a veterinarian or a BVSc or a MVSc graduate. So veterinarian is completely responsible actually to handle the day-to-day functioning of the animal house. If it is a new facility, they are involved right from the designing of the facility, procurement, of the items, equipments required, establishment of animal colony, procurement of feed, medicine, whatnot. Every aspect are actually controlled by veterinarian. And you will see in most of the companies, where animal houses are there, it is handled by veterinarians. In some cases, you will see that people from some other background, maybe from zoology or from M-Farm background, they may be taking care of the animal facility. But essentially, all companies eventually will actually, involve veterinarians only for this activity. Essentially, this activity is something that's completely under the control of veterinarian. So therefore, one of the area where you can work as a BVSc graduate, you can actually aspire to get into this, management of animal house. As an animal house veterinarian, it's not only that you are involved in the breeding and maintenance of animals. You, as an expert, you may also support the research team who are involved in pharmacology or who are involved in the toxicology studies, because they're, the research team not necessarily familiar with, all the veterinary aspects, because not all people are actually from a veterinary background. People who work in pharmacology division, pharmacokinetic division, or toxicology, only few are veterinarians. All remaining people are from a different educational background. And in many cases, you will see that most of them are from a M-Pharm background, M-Pharm, Master of Pharmacy in Pharmacology, M-Pharm specialization in Pharmacology. So most of the time, you will see that M-Pharm or, people with, PhD in pharmacology, so they are the people actually, who are involved in the pharmacology and pharmacokinetic studies. And therefore, they also take many a time help from animal house veterinarian. And therefore, you should be familiar with handling and common experimental techniques involved in the conduct of a research in animals, especially small animals, rats, mouse, guinea pigs, rabbits, etc. Role of veterinarian as a study pathologist. I mentioned in previous slide that pathology is an integral part of a toxicology. And this is the one area where only MVSc graduates can work. That too, people with specialization in pathology, MVSc pathology. Now, when you perform a toxicology study or a pharmacology study, there may be requirement. In many cases, you will require pathologist, and that pathologist has to be a veterinary pathologist. They are called, toxicopathologist, pathologist who support toxicology activities. So no other pathologist or no one else can do this activity. They have to be from MVSc pathology, and this is a unique position, unique role where no one else can actually come and substitute. And therefore, pathology, MVSc pathology, they are reserved. They are the people who can do these kind of activities. But as I said, MVSc is a must to act as a pathologist. You have to be an MVSc graduate. So if you are BVSc and you want to pursue MVSc and get into a pathology in a company, I think then that you should pursue MVSc in veterinary pathology. Veterinarian as a toxicologist. Toxicologist. In the beginning, I said safety evaluation is the most critical activity involved in a drug development, especially from a preclinical perspective, and that actually generates a lot of data. For a safety evaluation of a compound, you'll have to perform several studies, and sometimes these studies can run to years actually. For example, in a rodent, if you want to do a carcinogenicity study, it is actually 2 years. And in some non-rodent, for example, dog or monkeys, you may do a regular toxicology studies of 3 years, 4 years duration. So therefore, it is a highly resource intensive activity, the toxicology, conduct of a toxicology studies. And a battery of studies are required compared to the pharmacology data required to submit to the agency. The amount of data required to prove safety is actually huge, and that's what actually is listed here. This is typically for a new chemical entity. Remember, But even if when you are developing a differentiated products, the third type of category that I mentioned in my previous slide, there are also many of these studies will be required. If not all, many of these studies will be required, and that's where toxicologists are actually involved. Veterinary toxicologists are involved. Please remember that these studies are not done only by toxicology, veterinary toxicologists. Please remember, if you take the companies who are involved in these kind of studies, you will see that one or two veterinarians here and there. But, the majority of the resource, the toxicologists are from a different stream, not from a veterinary. They are mostly from a M.Pharm or a M.Pharm PhD background. They are the actually, they forms the bulk actually of the people involved in this kind of research. And that is essentially not because industry doesn't like veterinarians, it's simply because of the shortage of veterinarians actually. Historically, and if you look back, couple of decades back, you know that always there used to be shortage of veterinarians. Even to meet the requirement of a government sector, there were not enough veterinarians, and then you can imagine that's how in the preclinical sector in the pharma industry, that's how industry started working with pharmacology, M.Pharm pharmacology and M.Pharm PhD graduates. So that's how they are there now. But if there is availability of veterinary graduates, especially for toxicology studies, they are the preferred people to do this kind of studies. So I talked about toxicologists, where they can play a role, what kind of studies they are involved in. I talked about pathologists. I talked about vivarium or veterinarians' role in the management of animal health. Apart from that, in the beginning only I told, veterinarians may be involved in any aspect of a development of a drug. Some veterinarians are working in the clinical development. Some are working as administrator. Some are involved in the sales and marketing of a drug product. So therefore, veterinarians can be involved in any aspect of a drug development and marketing. However, most of the people are involved or are required in the preclinical research, pharmacology, pharmacokinetic, and toxicology studies. Now, why you should join pharma industry? If you have two options or maybe more than two options, and one of the options is pharma industry, why you should consider, pharma industry? What are the advantages of working in a pharma industry? So compared to a government sector, the industry provides ample opportunity for you to learn new things, expand your knowledge, and then grow your career. So that is very an attractive thing. And you may get a similar opportunity elsewhere, including government. But then it is much more wider. Pharma industry is much more wider, and therefore you have a better opportunity to learn, opportunity to show your full potential. Because this is an industry, and pharma companies are actually ready to invest on technologies, ready to invest on people. And if you have some ideas and concepts, which is going to benefit the company, then you can actually convince and then you can start implementing. Or if you are working in a particular area and you have abilities, actually, you have a very high skill set you will get an opportunity to demonstrate. Probably you may not get that, similar kind of opportunity to show your full potential maybe in a government sector, because government sector has its own limitations. So this is another point. Now, another advantage, working with the industry is that in pharma companies, especially good pharma companies, they invest on developing people. It's not only their technical skill, but in overall development as a human being, the personality development aspect of an employee. Companies are investing money on, improving the personality of, their employees. And therefore, when you work in this sector, your personality changes actually. So you will improve your personality. you will get opportunity to work in a state-of-the-art facilities. You would have studied many things, many science in your graduation or post-graduation. And in a government sector, probably sometime, not every time, but sometime you may see a limitation because of the resources. Whereas here, companies are willing to invest. If it's going to benefit them, they will invest. And therefore, state of the art, you can work, because in India, if you see, there are companies whose R&D is comparable or, much superior to many big companies, in Europe or US actually. We have that kind of facilities in India. So therefore, you can work in a state of the art facilities. There will be much freedom, in pharma because, the rules and regulations are a bit flexible. There will be freedom. People won't come and kind of, micromanage you. There are always exceptions. Okay. For all these points, there are exceptions, please remember. But then on an average, broadly speaking, you will have freedom to operate. Rewards and recognition. If you do something extraordinary, if you are doing good and contributing to the growth of the company, then certainly, you will get immediate reward. You will be rewarded and you will recognize for your contribution to the company. And of course, salary benefits, this is certainly is there. And another, the last but the least, but not the least, important point is a corruption-free environment. Again, I'm saying there are exceptions, but then, largely, there is no under the table dealings, so things are more straightforward and you can work in a very comfortable environment, especially if you are against corruption or against getting into the corrupt working environment. So the next question is, are veterinary graduates ready to serve pharma industry? One of the limitations that we see actually as a representative of a pharma company, or if I want to recruit people from a veterinary colleges, one of the gaps today is actually the graduates are not industry ready. The BVSC curriculum is more towards clinical side, oriented to clinical side, such that the focus is to develop a skilled doctor. Therefore, it's not oriented to meet the industry requirements, although I'm not sure how the current syllabus is, but then essentially this is how it looks like. Even MVSC course syllabus is actually, they are simply an extension of BVSC, and it's not shaping the students to meet the requirements of industry. Therefore, there is a gap at the moment in terms of, industry readiness. And then another point actually, when companies want to recruit the veterinary graduates is that, many a time the experience that, the young graduates, they come and join, they will be trained, company will be investing money and time, resources on training them because they are not industry ready. So when they work in the industry for a few years, that's where they will become industry ready. So what happens is after working a couple of years, they start, they shift their career from industry to academic or to government sector. So then, the company will get frustrated, after investing a lot, these people are actually not staying and they're going back or going elsewhere. So this is one of the, another limitations actually that, people talk about when we are recruiting veterinary graduate. And this is not only, I'm talking about BVSC, but even for MUSC. So these are certain considerations that will be kept in mind while interviewing a candidate actually. And this when I said industry ready, this doesn't mean that it's only a problem with the BVSC graduate or MUSC graduate. Even any sector, if you take MPharm curriculum or other, they are not industry ready, and that is the problem with every discipline. It's not only specific to veterinary or BVSC degree. So if you are aspiring to join a pharma industry, what are the qualities that you should possess? Okay, aspirant, strong in fundamentals. If you are going to attend an interview, the interviewer expects you to have a strong, thorough understanding of fundamental basics. For example, pharmacology. They will ask how a drug acts, what are different types of drugs, what are the different ways drug acts, how they are metabolized. In a simple language, you should be able to tell them, oh, this is how a drug works, this is how it is. So that basic understanding is what actually is required. The industry knows, the interviewer knows that you are not ready yet to serve the industry, but they want to know whether if they recruit you, whether you will be industry ready in a shorter period or not. For that you should have a strong understanding of the fundamentals. If you are a pathologist, MUSC pathologist, and you are trying to apply, you should know the basics of pathology very well. How the lesions are formed, how a disease progress, how you evaluate, basic concepts. If you are good in basics, I think that's, a strength actually for you. You should be knowing, familiarity with the consult activities. Where if you are trying in a R&D, okay, what are the things there happens, and you should be familiar with the kind of data that I talked about in my previous slide. You should be enthusiastic to learn. Actually, if you are joining industry means, it's not you're getting into a job. I would say that you are getting into another phase of your learning. I spent 16 years in the industry, and every day I'm learning. Actually, my job is simply learning, because I'm doing research. Every day things are new. So every day I keep reading and acquiring new knowledge and skills. So therefore, if you wish to work in an industry, you should be a learner. Actually, you should have enthusiasm to learn, rather than thinking that I got a job and now I can relax. If you have that kind of attitude, you are not the right candidate to join pharma industry. Dedication and flexibility. You should be dedicated. Actually, wherever you are working, you should be honest. You should show faith in that company, and you should show some dedication in terms of learning yourself and also to serve the company actually in a flexible manner. If a company requires a certain sort of sacrifice, you should be ready actually. And of course, company won't expect you to do that every day, but at times there may be a need, a pressure. So you should be willing to accept that and help the company to meet its to achieve its objectives. So these are some of the qualities that you should possess if you are aspiring to join industry. So one of the questions that I heard many times people asking, students asking, is MUSc degree required to work in a pharma companies? So my answer is, it's not necessary that you should have an MUSc degree. But what has happened is, one of the reasons why MUSc, when you're recruiting veterinarians, one of the things that we keep in mind, that if somebody has did an MUSc, that means he is interested to pursue research. So that therefore, if we recruit that person, he is likely to stay in the company rather than going back elsewhere, to academic or to other government sector. So that is one thinking. But there's no requirement that you should have MUSc. Even veterinarians are good enough actually to work as a study director, to lead R&D, because veterinarians, actually the BVSc deals with every aspects of human and veterinary health and how the drug works. So therefore, BVSc people will have an understanding, basic understanding of how drug works, and therefore that alone should suffice. Now, if you join with the BVSc degree, the further growth in the company depends not on your degree actually. It depends on how you are performing. If you are doing well, you can take up higher and higher roles, and there is no stop. Nobody will stop just because you are a BVSc. Nobody will stop you. So there, instead of degrees and certificates in the industry, especially in a good companies, it is you are measured, you are judged based on your qualities, your skill set, your leadership qualities, your personality, and not only based on your technical skill alone. And therefore, it is not essential that you should have an MSc or a PhD to succeed your career in pharma industry. Although it may be advantageous at times, because in some companies at least they will see graduate versus masters versus PhD. There may be difference in the scale, there may be difference in the preferences, etc., at least at the time of joining. But once you are in, then things are different. Then you will be judged not based on your qualification. You will be judged based on your performance, and therefore master's degree may help you to get entry But if you, as a BVSC graduate, if you are lucky enough to get entry, get recruited, I think there is no stop. Nobody will stop you in from advancing your career and growth in the pharma industry. So how to find an open position in a company? If you are an aspirant and you want to know in which companies I can get a job, or what are the ways how I can actually apply, etc. So there are, I can say, three types of companies actually. One is companies who are into core R&D. Then second category is companies who are specialized in toxicology services. Just they do the studies. They are not into R&D. They work for someone else. They are called contract research organization. I didn't mention about that. But in India, there are 40 plus GMP certified contract research laboratories in India. So they do not have their own drug products, but they simply work for someone else. They work for pharma companies. Pharma companies outsource their studies to the contract research organizations, and CROs, they perform the studies. So you can target contract research organizations. You can target the core pharma companies. You can also target animal breeders and suppliers. There are companies, some companies in India, they are exclusively dealing with animal production, breeding, and supply. So these are broadly three different types of companies you can actually target. Certainly the easiest way to get contacts is through your teachers, because the teachers will be knowing the seniors. For example, in this case, Dr. Shridhar, I know him very well. He helped me a lot during my MBSc, and he supported me a lot during my stay in the college and subsequently as well. So he knows very well that I am there in a particular company. And then if you really want to explore pharma companies, want to apply somewhere, maybe if you ask Shridhar, maybe Shridhar sir will give you my contacts. This is just an example. There are many other people who are working in the industry. So that's one way you can actually, get some contacts, and that's how you will come to know open position. LinkedIn is a very good source actually of information for a job aspirant. You can get connected with people who are working in pharma industry, especially in the R&D, especially the areas that I talked about: pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, toxicology, etc. Animal house, etc. And then, be in touch with them. You can ask them, is there an opportunity? Can you help me? They may, if there are vacancies, they will let you know. Otherwise, they may even forward your CV, or, they may refer you to someone else, So LinkedIn is certainly a very good source. In my case, I was referred by one of my professor in surgery. I knew him very well. And then someone in the industry asked the professor whether, is there any good pharmacology graduates? And that's how, professor told me, yeah, there is a vacancy, and if you want, you can apply. That's how I got into Dr. Reddy's laboratories, in 2006. And then when I moved from Dr. Reddy's to current company, this contact I got through LinkedIn actually. Register with job portals. There are many website, companies actually job portals. You can register and submit your CV. If there are open vacancies, they will let you know. They will send emails to you, and that's how you can come to know that there are vacancies for a graduate. Conferences and webinars, again, you will, advantage is that you will come to know who are all the people speaking, who are all different participants, what is the topic that interests to the industry, and you may get some leads actually in terms of knowing, where to apply. So certainly they are helpful. Company website, you can go to the pharma companies or contract research organizations, browse through their website. There will be dedicated pages dealing with HR and recruitment. So certainly you can explore that. You can submit a CV to the emails, and then, you can try that. So these are some of the ways by which, you can explore open position in the pharma companies. So this is all actually that, some of the topics. What I didn't talk about is limitations or, challenges. I spent 16 years. My personal view that, there is no place, no workplace that will give you 100% satisfaction, or it meets 100% of your expectation. There is no place, and there is no person also. It's not only workplace. Nobody in this world who can meet 100% of your expectation. That's a reality. There will be certain gaps. Now, that is something that, the reality that I have understood. But what is important is actually that, what interests you, whether this field is interesting to me or not. If you are interested, the adversities also you will start enjoying. You will not feel them as adversities. You will enjoy. So, for example, when I was working in my previous company in the R&D, there I was working on a setting up of a new assay in that company. That's a very new technology actually. That was an electrophysiology. I was completely zero in that. I never had an exposure to electrophysiology experiments. In BVSC or in MBSC, there was nothing actually of that sort. And in India, there were only a couple of labs who were doing that kind of assay. And when I started working on that, I took that as a challenge. And I started validating that assay, establishing that as an assay to screen compounds. It was all not working. It's not giving the result. Then I tried. And on few days, I miss lunch, I miss tea, coffee, sometimes dinner also. It's only working on that with the only one intention that I should solve this problem and I should be able to establish this assay. And I remember some days, I went to lab at 5 o'clock in the morning and reached home 3 o'clock in next day morning. Maybe in between some bread or something, I ate only that. So I was trying. So, because I was interested and I wanted to solve that problem, I never felt that it is a pressure, to me. And nobody forced me to do that actually. It was all my interest that I wanted to crack this problem. If people in US or Europe can do that, say, why not myself? That was the challenge that I took as a challenge. And then whatever the adversity is coming, I never took that as an adversity. I enjoyed that actually, because I thought, my ultimate goal is to solve this problem and establish this. And I was successful actually, finally. So, that's how it is. So it is important that, what interests you. If it is interesting to you, certainly, there will not be any problem. And as such, when it comes to private companies, people talk about layoff, job instability when compared to the government sector. So this is one of the things actually many times that comes up actually. When I joined, companies 2006, I also got the opportunity to work in a government sector as a veterinary officer. But somehow my inclination was to work in the research in the private industry. So first time I didn't join. But second time also applied, third time also applied, and then third time, then I decided that, I will continue in the private industry. I will not be going to the government sector. Because then I realized that I am suitable for this industry. I may not be the best suit in the government sector. So I realized that, I may not be the perfect fit in the government. I also realized that my interest is to work in this kind of a setup. And that's why I decided that I will continue. And till today, there is no regret actually. I am really enjoying. One of the limitations that I was thinking at that time was personally, I wanted to be there somewhere closer to my native place. If I continue in the private industry, there is no way that, I can come to closer to my native place, which is, Kollur, near Udupi. So, but still I thought, that's okay. I can maybe work, the closest place will be Bangalore. But then luckily, after some time, unexpectedly, I got an opportunity to work from home, even before COVID. The current company, Pharmalex, offered me that, if you really wish to be there near to your hometown, you can opt for work from home. And luckily, I got that opportunity as well. And today, since last 4 years, I am working from home. and I'm giving this presentation from my home, my own home actually. So what I thought was not possible at the time, somehow by God's grace, I got that opportunity as well. So that's how, it is actually. So what is important is your interest. If you are interested, you can convert adversaries also into opportunities. So that's how it is. In terms of a job stability, I don't think if you are a good performer, okay, I don't think there will be any issues. With my experience, I can say, when after spending 3 or 4 years, I was working in the NCE research, new chemical entities, the original innovator research, and after 4 years or so, company decided to stop that kind of a business and move into a different kind of a business. But there was no problem for my job. I never thought there is any problem. The company, because companies are actually having good intention. They are into business and they have some good intention. And especially in an Indian setup, when they think of a layoff or, reducing their investment, they first think of the people actually. So they think, what to do with these people, how we can help these employees. So they will not, simply kind of, start removing people and all. But in any case, the people who are not performers, so if at all company want to cut down, the number of employees, people who are doing good, there will not be any issues actually, because companies want good people to be there. And for veterinarians, when you talk about, even if there are layoffs or any other issues, because veterinarians are very few in number, in the industry, whatever may be the adversity, I do not see any problem actually to the job or job stability for veterinarians in the pharma industry. And then for veterinarians is a huge opportunity actually. It's not only the pharma, but related to pharma. I didn't talk about nutraceutical companies, nutraceuticals. So there are many other things, biological companies, people who are in vaccine and things like that. So there are ample opportunity for veterinarian in the industry, and therefore I don't see any issues, with the job stability or any other action. So these are some of the points that I wanted to talk, and I think it's now 1 hour, but I guess it is possible to spend some more time answering questions.
Thank you, Sebastian, for a 1 hour lecture. It's very nice that you have explained everything in very detail in your own passion. That's I used to see you about 16 or 20 years back, the same zeal and other thing you have explained. And also about all the points you have touched, especially the youngsters, they will have a lot of questions, especially what are all my roles and what is the security of the job, and what is the difference between the government job and a private job, what are all the job securities and how to perform, etc. All these are the major points to be addressed by the experienced persons like you in the pharmaceutical industries about 16 years. That's a very great achievement what you have achieved. And I am very happy about the pattern, how you have updated with the simple language, and also the not making anything very much complicated, so that some of the people which give the lectures, etc., they make the things very complicated. They will not be open like that. You have given a very wonderful presentation. To me, it is very much satisfactory, of course, to the participants also, I think. And as usual, there are very few questions. Of course, I had listed so many questions, but all those things are very well addressed by you without any doubts, etc. Even then, some of the few questions are waiting, and Dr. Drishya, she has asked, what is the major difference between the MD pharmacology and MSc pharmacology and M Pharma? That's, I think you have partially answered. But the medical graduates, they are not in the pharmaceutical industries, as I know very well, to some extent, as I visited many pharmaceutical companies and other things. So about this, what's your opinion, Dr. Sebastian?
MD pharmacology is equivalent to something similar to MVSC pharmacology. MVSC pharmacology people do their job with the animals in the preclinical stage of the drug development, whereas MD pharmacology people will be doing the same job in the clinical development phase of the drug development. MVSC pharmacology will be thinking which species to select, what dose to give, how the dosing should be done, which route, which gavage needle, or things like that. The MD pharmacology people will be thinking what age group of a patient should be selected. If it is a diabetes drug, what should be the range of blood sugar that should be included in the research in the subjects with that blood sugar level only will be included. What should be the dose level to be administered? What should be the frequency of administration? Which are the other drugs that can be allowed in those patients who are going to take our investigative drug? Essentially the same thing. Only difference is species is different. Otherwise, it is same. Now, MD pharmacologists, as Dr. Shridhar said rightly, I have not seen any MD pharmacology people working in the preclinical projects or preclinical stage of the drug development. However, the other way is true. MVSC pharmacologists are working in the clinical development together with MD pharmacologists. But MD pharmacology people are not working in preclinical because they do not know how to handle animals or the complexities of doing research in animals. Complexities of research in human is totally different from complexity in animals, which they are not familiar. On the other hand, since we have, as a veterinarians, we have handled many species, we can very well easily understand, and we ourselves are human beings, no? So we can very well understand the complexities of doing research in human. And therefore, we can take part in the clinical research, but not the other way. When it comes to M-Pharm pharmacology, they are working in both actually, both clinical as well as non-clinical. It is essentially because of the shortage of specialized people. For example, in the clinic, there are not many MD pharmacologists available to join work in industry. MD pharmacologists are working elsewhere, or MD, there are very few people opt MD pharmacology, when it comes to MD. When it comes to post-graduation in medical science, people opt for clinical subjects, less with the pharmacology and things like that. And those graduates also, they may be working abroad or they may be doing something else, and others working in the clinical development. And therefore, not many are available. Therefore, M-Pharm pharmacologists are working there. And the similar case in the preclinical also. MVSC, there are not, nowadays you are seeing, inflows of people, graduates in MVSC pharmacology, but previously that was not the case. And therefore, at that time, M-Pharm pharmacologists started working, in preclinical research. So that's how they are there, that's the difference between these two.
Okay, that's a very good answer because they are the easily available graduates, and I think with actually BVSC or the what you call as this MBBS, they are very long-term degrees. Of course, the M-Pharm and other thing they can get it very early. Yes, that's the good thing. And Elsa has asked what about the opportunities in pharma industries in the abroad when compared to the India, and what may be the difference in the type of the job, especially that's one question. And another thing, it was also explained that can you explain about the DABT and advantages of having the DABT? There are two questions, so we can answer it part by part.
In terms of veterinarians working in India or abroad in the pharmaceutical sector, I don't see much difference, whether their quality of work or their job opportunities. If you see in India, there are many companies who are working for clients outside India. Client companies will be in Europe or US. Here we have a CRO or any other service company, service organization, and we are serving companies who are located in the US or Europe. So we are working for them. Now, people who are working in US or Europe, they may be also working for the same company. And I don't see any difference, because the type of data that is required for submission to the regulatory agency remains more or less same. The infrastructure available in these type of companies, again, more or less same, because in India now, in good companies, you will see all the modern technologies, which are available in abroad, US or Europe, they are also available in India. And therefore, I don't see any difference. When it comes to job opportunities, in European countries and in US, to my knowledge, I see that there is again a shortage of veterinary graduates. There is a great demand for veterinary graduates and postgraduates. However, there are not enough graduates available to work in pharma companies. And therefore, if you want to try to get an opportunity abroad, it is much easy for a veterinarian to get a job in a Europe or in US compared to other stream, people from other stream, because there is inherent shortage of these graduates in those countries. And therefore, there is a good potential, good scope actually for people who want to get into companies US and Europe. And I know many of them actually who graduated from India, my friends and people who I know very well, from other companies. They have shifted from India to Europe and US, and they are working. Some of them are working in companies there, pharma companies there, well settled. And the next question is about DABT. DABT is actually, if you see the DABT as a certification, to get a DABT certificate, you need to write an exam and clear it. And if you see the exam pattern, it is not based on a fixed marks. It is based on percentile actually. Even if there may be chances that even if you answer 40% of the questions correctly, you may still qualify. You imagine, if you are writing an exam and if you are getting 40%, how other people rate you? You'll say, oh, he has just passed the exam, But on the other hand, if you are getting 85, oh, you are meritorious, So with the kind of DABT type of exams, which is based on the percentile, if exam is tough for everyone, it's good for you, there's no problem. If it is tough only for you, then only is a problem. Now, with that kind of a system, just because you qualified that exam doesn't mean that you have excelled in the topics or in the syllabus of that exam. That is one thing. So therefore, you just clear DABT doesn't mean that you are now an expert in toxicology. Please remember that. It is just a certification. You would have seen people, with the BVSc graduation, BVSc degrees, and many of people will know the medicine, but at least some of your own colleague, your own classmates, they may not be knowing much about veterinary, BVSc, treatment, animal, things like that, but still they are qualified as a doctor. So for a veterinarian to practice, he has to have a certificate. Okay, it's just a certification. Doesn't mean that he knows everything. It's the same way actually. DABT is just a certificate. It's not a guarantee that you are an expert. So therefore, I will emphasize more on your skills, your experience, your industry readiness in toxicology rather than too much on DABT. However, if you wish to continue develop your career in toxicology, it is desirable to have a certifications like DABT. That one advantage is that, for an outside person who do not know you, who do not know your capability, who do not know your skill, for an outsider, let's say for a US, people from the US, when you say, introduce you as a toxicologist working in XYZ company and, this is a background, they may not, accept you immediately, On the other hand, in addition, you say, I wrote an exam conducted by the American Board of Toxicology, qualified, and I am a diplomat. They will say, oh, okay, that means you have even met American standards. That way acceptability will be more, when to the external world, that much I can say, acceptability will be more. But there is no guarantee that you will be a better toxicologist if you are qualified as a DABT. So therefore, it is advantageous certainly to get a DABT, but if you are unable to clear, or you do not have that certification, it should not be a concern for you. You should never worry about it. You can attempt and see whether you can clear it. But if you are not clearing it, you should never worry about it. You should go ahead. You should acquire new knowledge in toxicology and become an expert. For becoming an expert, you need not have a DABT. Once you have that knowledge, skill, then people will anyway accept you as an expert toxicologist.
Yes, thank you. That's a good answer. And someone has asked the question, can you please suggest some good veterinary pharma companies? What is the difference between the regular pharma companies and veterinary pharma companies?
In India, if you see, there are good pharma companies, good human pharmaceutical companies, and they may have a small division who are manufacturing, drug products for veterinary use. As I said in the beginning, there are no huge difference between a pharma company who are exclusively into human versus a pharma company exclusively into veterinary. There are not much difference. Most of the R&D work, the initial R&D work would have been done as part of human medicine only. If you see any drugs that used in veterinary today, except for certain specialized drugs, in certain specialized species, for example, cattle and all. But in other cases, all the drugs that are used in humans are only developed for veterinary purpose. So the research is taking place mainly for the purpose of meeting requirements of a human medicine, human pharma industry. And therefore, the information from that is made use in developing a medicine for veterinary use. I'm not sure how it works in India, but in US and Europe, the regulatory mechanism that exists for a veterinary product is same or similar like a human pharmaceutical. Whatever the data that you need to submit to the agency for a veterinary drug, it is something similar to that required for a human medicine. So there is not much difference in the data requirement. There is no difference in the complexities involved, other than testing that drug in the particular target species. So that way, I don't see huge difference in the R&D when it comes to the veterinary medicine. The concept remains same, only a little bit tweaking, you do to meet specific requirements of a veterinary product. So one of the limitation, if you see, I was talking to a CEO of a reputed pharma company in India, and I was asking why your company is a top 3 company actually in India, but why are you not having veterinary division? Why are you not manufacturing products for veterinary species? So he said that, the only simple reason is that, it is economically not viable for them. Because that company happens to be, marketing, producing drugs and exporting to US, Europe, and even to domestic consumption in India. And they're based on their assessment, they decided that the profit that they get working on veterinary medicine, veterinary pharma is much less compared to human. And they thought instead of getting complicated with too many divisions, focusing on veterinary and then human and both, so they decided to focus on areas which gives maximum returns. Because ultimately, the industry, it is not a charitable organization. It is a business-oriented companies. So here, companies have to make money. Ultimately, money making is one of the objective. That may not be the primary objective. Okay, companies will say our objective is to meet unmet medical demand, manufacture drugs and help people and provide medicine at cheaper cost. These are all their objective. But in addition to that, they are business organizations. They are not charitable organizations. So therefore, things that are looking attractive from a business, they will invest more. So that is the status. As such, there is, from a development perspective, there are no huge difference between veterinary and human.
Okay, there is a last question actually, because we have spent a lot of time. Is there any place for the creativity in the contract research organizations to either maybe the pathologists or pharmacologists, because it is a prototype of the job according to the already laid guidelines of the regulatory authorities. Unlike this, especially this CRO organizations, they do copy and other thing and every day, and a pathologist every day he has to slice the slides and other thing. Is there any scope for the creativity of his own or interest, etc.?
In the CRO industry, and especially when you are doing certain regulatory studies, studies for the purpose of submission to the agency. The other type of studies are exploratory studies, studies conducted with the objective of understanding, something, or objective of getting answer to certain your research questions. So these are two different set of studies actually. With the regulatory studies, flexibility is less. With the exploratory studies, huge flexibility is there. Now, it is a reality that when you are working with certain regulatory studies, scope for innovation is limited. But that doesn't mean that there is no scope for innovation. Now, in CRO industry, what happens, especially if I talk about CROs here in India, and that's not too different even in outside, is that there is a sponsor company, maybe a pharma company, wants to outsource a particular study to a CRO. CRO staff will think that whatever the sponsor says, that's ultimate. They are our boss. So they are saying like this, so I should do it like this. It's not actually, that's not the case. You as a researcher, you as an expert in that field, it's your responsibility to advise that sponsor with the rationale as to why you think that this study should be designed in a different way. So you can suggest, you can advise in a polite way, you can educate these sponsors and bring in innovation into the studies that they are actually planning. So, but in reality, that's not happening, because of the wrong perception. People think that they are sponsors, they are giving a particular, they're asking to do a particular way, I should simply do it that way. Actually, that is not the case. You should, advise the client, and that will be possible only when you become an expert. If you simply involve in day-to-day study conduct, simply just doing these XYZ activities and over and go home, then you will not become an expert. You should have actually inquisitiveness to learn. You should spend time in the lab. You should spend time with the animals. You should spend time in reading and acquiring new information, and then putting into practice some of the new learnings in your day-to-day studies. Then slowly you will become expert in that field. And once you become expert, you will be able to advise the sponsors. Yeah, but ultimately there is some constraint if you are a pathologist working supporting a toxicology study. Yes, there are certain limitations in terms of innovation, because certain defined activities you are supposed to do. So therefore, that is part of that job, and we should accept that.
That's good answer. And a last question, of course, I told earlier that was the last, but one question is there: how I can apply for a position in a pharma company abroad? That's asked by Elza.
The same mechanisms which I mentioned in the previous slides.
Yes, about it, yes.
So this is similar mechanism, similar platforms you can explore. One of the problem I think additionally is it's not that every company, every foreign company who are advertising, they will sponsor for your visa. In many of such advertisements, you will see that, that we don't take that responsibility. If you have a valid visa or work permit, then you are eligible. But, from company side, they don't do it. But then there are other companies who are ready to sponsor, actually, ready to, take, you as an external person. So you should keep trying. And many of the people, rather, the option that they have explored is, to go there to pursue certain project as a, for the masters, or, to do PhD, postdoc, and then, from there, they find a way to get a job. I think both the ways it is possible. You should look for companies who are ready to sponsor you, and then you can move out. Or, going there for study purpose and then, exploring a job opportunity. I think, to my knowledge, these are the two ways actually you can get into.
Okay, that was the last question. Of course, I'm extremely thankful for you, Dr. Sebastian, for remaining with us for about 1.5 hours, last 1.5 hours. And we will be happy to have you on our board recurrently, especially the offline and sometimes the online also, because nowadays this corona pandemic is there and the government is very cautious about the especially meetings, etc. So we could not organize the especially the varieties of the seminars and other things. Of course, we will surely have you, especially in Veterinary College Shimoga. We are enthusiastic to have you because of your vast knowledge, especially in the pharma sector for last 16 years, and as also your very hard work and also the interest in the learning is very much appreciable from all the faculty of the Karnataka Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, Bidar. Of course, you are the alumni of this, and we are very proud of you, Dr. Sebastian, for being with us for such a long time. And you are always the research persons and inspirations to the youngsters. And with this, I thank you profoundly from my behalf and also from the behalf of the Dean Veterinary College Shimoga, Dr. Nadu sir, who gave the permission to conduct this particularly the session for such a long time, and also the university. And now, last but not least, I wish a good success you in your future endeavors. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. As I said in the beginning, it's an honor, and I enjoy spending time with this institution, with this university. And I am thrilled actually, when it comes to this university. So it's my pleasure actually to participate and share some inputs, insights on the pharma toxicology industry and so on. And you are always welcome actually. And it's an honor actually for me to be part of this kind of, sessions. And thank you all the participants. And I wish good luck actually. In case you have further questions or need any inputs, you can always contact me. If you need my contact details, you can approach Dr. Shridhar, and you are welcome actually to talk to me.
Thanks, Sebastian. And with this, we are going to end this particular section. And in future also, we will be meeting recurrently for getting such very good advice and expert advice from such experienced persons like Dr. Sebastian, etc. Thanks a lot and good night.